Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Miles, and this is X-Raised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. If you're leading people, managing risk, or thinking seriously about sustainability and responsibility in your organization, today's conversation is one you'll want to stay with. We'll be with a guest who really needs no introduction, but I'll give him one as always, because he spent more than 40 years helping organizations across industries to build better businesses around people, their competence, their capability, and their confidence. He's also been a consistent voice reminding leaders that resilience is about who your systems are designed for and whether they actually support people when it matters most. Joining us once again is Ian Erskine, the Managing Director and CEO of ACI Global and e-Quip. Hello, Ian. Good morning to you.
And good morning to you, Miles, and wonderful to be back together again with yourself and our listeners and viewers. And so looking forward to having a discussion in reference to the topic this morning. And as you said, it's all based around people. And it's amazing when we continue to come back to that very fact.
Yes.
Everything revolves around people, and we must not forget that.
Yes, and I agree. And we've missed you. And it's about time to focus on the principles of security and resilience within business management with a very deliberate lens on people, inclusion, and what I'm more interested in, the protection of personal identifiable information, Ian, because real resilience only works if it works for everyone. Why do you think it's so important that security and resilience frameworks are designed around people first rather than expecting people to simply adapt to the system?
Well, this is quite simple, really. And I guess the importance is, and what we've done, we've built everything around our own business code of ethics. And we must do everything in our power to ensure that our people, from stakeholders to learners, assimilate with each other's principles and values. Now, it's pointless if we have our principles and values, but when a learner comes on board or we get together with a stakeholder, whether that's X-rays or whoever, if there's a clash between our principles and values, it simply won't work. It will end up falling down. And I think a clear case of this in point, going right back to people, is what happened with the Bondi massacre. There was a clear case where those people's principles and values clearly do not match people in Australia, and even within the Western world and the world broader would not match people's values and principles, because people's values and principles relate very much to a security of the individual themselves, right, and others.
Mhm.
And when it all comes down to the fact, it comes down to a love for each other, for us to be able to continue our discussions, continue our journeys in life. And if we don't have that assimilation of our principles and values, it simply won't work.
Right. Mhm. And I like that perspective because when systems forget the human element, I think they usually fail, as you said, at the exact moment they're meant to protect people the most. And so, building on that, Ian, one area that doesn't get talked about nearly enough is inclusion, especially for people with special needs. When organizations are designing resilient management systems, how should they be thinking differently to ensure no one is unintentionally left behind during disruptions, incidents, or change?
Well, this is, when it's all said and done, is so simple, and needs to be done at the very beginning of the journey. Now, as you know, when all our learners join us, they join us on a journey of not just discovery, but of becoming higher achievers. Now, if we don't understand each other's principles and values right at the very start, there is no way we can put together a platform or a program for each of our learners and special needs and so forth. So that's where it starts at the very beginning. And we do spend a lot of time at the very start of all our programs getting to
Mhm.
understand the candidate's needs, expectations, where they come from, and above all, if they do have any special needs, we discuss those up front. And I can give you a clear case of where we had a young lady join us that had uh, an inability to basically read correctly. Her eyesight wasn't too bad, but it was a little
Mhm.
bit bad, right?
Okay.
So we said, no, that's fine. We'll introduce you to what we have, what is called a reader's pen. And it's a scanning pen, and it's a brilliant idea. And what it does, it gives the candidate the ability with a pen, run the pen over the writing, right, and the letters, and it
Mhm.
reads it back to them. Actually, literally reads it back to them, and
Interesting.
that way they can immediately understand what is required. And
Mhm.
so, yes, so that's where, like I said, we start very much at the very beginning. And we have had instances where we go through a person's experience, their capabilities, their journey in life. And they'll actually come back to us and say, we want to do such and such a course. We'll go through their history and so forth and go back to them and say, well, you can actually go to an even bigger course if you like, because you already have that prior learning, the knowledge and capability
The
simply
foundation.
through the interview that we put them through.
Mhm.
And that quite often happens.
Yeah, the foundation.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's an important point. It's easy to say a system is very strong, but if it doesn't work for everyone, then it's not really resilient at all. And it's great that it starts from the very beginning of the journey. And I'd like to touch on another critical piece of this conversation, Ian, which is the personal identifiable information. As organizations collect more data about employees, customers, and stakeholders, including sensitive personal details, I know you've been very particular about this. How does strong PII management fit into the broader principles of security, resilience, and trust?
Well, this is the one that is in some respects increasingly becoming a frustration. And in having said that, that
Uh-huh.
frustration can't become a point where you lose sight of where we're both going.
Mhm.
And so we've become rapidly understanding that there is only a certain amount of information in the modern era that's ever going to be able to be retrievable. And that's where we start to concentrate on PII, personal identifiable information,
Uh-huh.
and the journey we're on, even more so now with an organisation where we've now pulled away from and trying to get back to them to demonstrate we want them to actually return our email address, my email address,
Mhm.
and then delete it from their systems. And, after a number of passing emails, the conversation went to the point where, no, just have a look at our personal information secure policy and so forth, and it's all there. Now,
Mhm.
when you read it, it always relates back to the European Union's GDPR PII policy, where a person has the ability to ask for that information back. But what is rapidly becoming known now is because there is so much data going into the data centers and so much data being collected now, and this is where ACI Global is going to lead, we're going to be very upfront with clients and simply saying personal information has to be selective, has to be recorded by us both. And we must remember as we move forward that over a given period of time, we're going to have to revisit that personal information and simply say, well, if that's not needed in our journey anymore, Ian, can you please remove and erase that from your system? Because ACI, regardless of how strong your systems are, we are always at risk of an attacker getting into the system and taking that data. So we're now at the point of making our system so robust so that we can actually go back to the candidate and said, in actual fact, we don't need your license anymore. The identification process is finished. So that now is passed back to you. We have the systems and we'll show you the systems how not only do we delete it, but we will erase that off our hard drives. So that's the
Uh-huh.
process that we're embarking on this year to ensure that we don't have unnecessary PII, personal identifiable information, at our hands, where that should be always back in the hands of the person themselves.
Right. Mhm. And I know and understand what exactly you're talking about, Ian. And I think trust is the key word there. Once that trust is broken, it's incredibly hard to earn back, no matter how good the technology is. And that applies to any aspects in life, right?
Yes, and that's a very interesting point you've raised there because it's nigh impossible, right?
Hmm. Right.
And again, I can give personal examples of where we're at this very point of time.
Hmm.
There's been a number of major changes to the Australian money laundering laws.
Hmm.
Now, for that to be looked at and for organisations then to be put in place where they have systems that are correct and not open to money laundering, there's certain things that ACI Global has had to go through, which were actually has to be finalised by the start of February, right?
Uh-huh.
So we were approached first of all by a bank, and they said you need to go online and fill this form in.
Hmm.
This was 6 months ago, so I did that.
Uh-huh.
Just about to accept everything, all the information was ready there to be accepted, and then a message came on the screen. We have a technical issue called come back later.
Uh-huh.
Now, over the 6 month period, I must have revisited the website half a dozen times, same message, to the point where the one lady said, oh, look, we can shortcut that. We'll give you a link where you fill the form in and then take it to your bank.
Uh-huh.
Now, that's what I actually did last week. But again, I raised the point directly with them and said, look, would you raise the issue again? Because you can't have sitting on your website that you have a technical issue, but you never address it.
Uh-huh.
And again, we're talking about our personal information being put on their website, okay, shareholders and things like that, percentages of the shareholders, all that was put online. And anyway, so the lady actually filled out a form and said, well, I'll now send that off. And then I said to her, I said, wouldn't it have been nice if you yourself would have been able to immediately go into your system and fix that issue?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm finding now is that people are coming back and saying, oh no, we'll pass that on to someone else. And so what they're saying, we'll pass that on to our stakeholder.
Hmm.
But the problem is the stakeholder or the arrangement they have with their stakeholders is not robust or not open enough where it never gets fixed.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is. And I can relate to what you've experienced, Ian. I mean, it's so tedious and it's confusing at times, but right now, ACI Global places a strong emphasis on developing competence, skills, and capability within organizations. When things go wrong, whether it's a data issue, operational disruption, or human error, how does internal capability make the difference between a business that reacts calmly and one that scrambles?
Well, I guess that's where I was heading to there is that we have to have systems in place that if an issue does go wrong, you yourself have to be able to fix that problem. Now,
Mhm.
if you can't, you must have a process in place where you can go to a fellow employee or a senior manager and say, look, we have an issue here. There it is. Show them that needs to be fixed. The problem I'm seeing now, as I said before, is what is happening, and particularly, and a number of people have simply said it to me. They've simply said, oh, look, I'll hand that over to AI. And I said, no, you can't hand it over to AI And the normal thing that I say to people, I say, when you talk about AI, what do you mean by A? What does the A actually stand for? And they come back to me and they say artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it's not artificial intelligence, it's human intelligence. So if it's human intelligence, where is it? And why can't you access that human intelligence to fix the problem?
Mm-hmm.
Now
I
people say,
really
"Oh no,
agree.
no, I use AI and I can fix it virtually straight away." And I say, "Well, give me an example of it." And more than often than not, it comes back. And this is what I've seen. I saw this in an organisation I did when I first returned to work in January, early this month. I had a look at the process and I went through and I knew the process very well. And I said, okay, can you step me through the process from the end to the start? And they said, but it's all there. I said, I know, but you step me through that process which you've given me from AI, right? And they started to step back from the end, and all of a sudden they missed part of the process. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, hang on, where has that part of the process gone? And they came back to me and said, oh, we quickly improved that by AI. Oh, okay, we're going to have to put that back in
Mm-hmm.
because it had gone into a massive data center, whole information together, put together, and said, oh no, those people don't need that, send it back to them, and this is what it turns out. And
Mm-hmm.
it's missing part of the process.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the point I'm making there is that it's missing the part of the process which is people, specific people within an organization. They're the ones that know the process better than anyone else.
Yeah.
It's like yourself, my dear. When you do the interview, you then look at the recording, you listen to the recording, you get a readout of the recording, and you put your review together from that.
Mm-hmm.
You're the best person to do that. Not someone outside the organisation, not a machine, or not even in argument's sake, not even another person. You're the best person to do it because you're the one interviewing me directly.
Yeah.
You're watching my mannerisms and my smile or my concerns,
Yeah.
right?
And that must be really frustrating. I mean, I know the feeling, and you can know or feel the difference in organizations where people know what to do versus those relying on AI, as you said, or on a manual no one's opened in years, or worse, on a process that never existed at all. I mean, would you rely or would you be confident with an AI than human intelligence? And we know that expectations around ethical responsibility, data protection, inclusion, and resilience are only increasing. How is ACI Global helping organizations design management systems, Ian, that don't just meet standards, but actively protect people, respect personal data, and build long term credibility?
Well, this is, I guess, makes me immensely proud because uh, through our front row seat with being ISO certified, but also being a founding member of the Global Reporting Initiative, it gives us, like I said, that front row seat where we're sitting there, we're constantly having feedback in reference to our systems and our websites and our training programs. And we're constantly talking to other people within different industries. And collectively, everyone is now saying, hold on a minute, stop. We have to refocus on people. And this is where I'm stepping in. And we're even doing it now. We're going to have a look at our principles and values and have a look at Australia's principles and values, and we're just going to make sure that everything's aligned, right? Because there could be a few tweaks we need to do, because this is where it becomes oh so important. And it gives us the ability to design systems that
Mm-hmm.
don't just come off the shelf,
Mm-hmm.
right? We design systems, as we discussed last week, in reference to the person themselves within the organization is collectively and personally involved in putting together all their processes, right? And then they then look at that process and say, well, okay, how does that process actually get delivered? So
Yeah.
there's a step process in that, A, B, C, D, E, and F, right? And that's where we're showing the world that, yes, that's perfect. Then you put that in place, then you actually then act on that. But then to put the icing on the cake is you then, on an ongoing basis, you review that step process because all through life, and particularly now where we're increasingly being exposed to systems that are being altered by third parties and putting our own processes at risk, this is where we have to increasingly have a look at our own way of delivering that process, right? And I challenge people because at a lot of times that are happening now is when they have a look at how that process is being delivered. Well, as I just mentioned before, hello, what happened to step 5 of the step 8 process? Oh, we sent that away to be reviewed by AI because we thought that would be a better way of doing it. Now come back and all of a sudden that part of that process is missing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only way you're going to review and ensure that that is always being reviewed is using a skills and task assessment process of people
Mm-hmm.
doing their jobs to ensure at all times they're doing it at their very best of their capability, which ensures meritocracy.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I have to say, faster progress through AI doesn't mean it's the efficient way to resolve issues. And resilience is more than just a protection. It's pretty clear that it's the reflection of an organization's values. True resilience indeed is about protecting people, respecting their data, and most importantly, designing systems that work under pressure without leaving anyone behind. And
Yes.
that's something every leader, regardless of industry, can and should take away from this conversation, Ian. Thank you once again for continually reminding us that strong systems like what you've been building start with thoughtful design and thoughtful leadership. Thank you so much.
And my pleasure. And actually, I should say that's our pleasure because with your discussions and asking me the questions and discussing the systems and the issues on hand each week, together we are going out to people and giving them an aspect of things that they should be looking at and addressing.
Thank you, Ian. And for anyone watching or listening to our podcast who wants to strengthen their organization's approach to security, resilience, inclusion, and even data protection, you better check the links we're sharing below. Thank you for staying with us until our next one. This has been your host, Miles. Stay focused, driven, and inspired with X-Raced.